Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Someone asked about a little passage in the first sutta we talked about, where the different basic conditions, vital conditions were talked about for awakening, and this part was the third vital condition. And it was when a practitioner gets to take part in talk about self-effacement that helps open the heart, that they get to do that when they want to without trouble or difficulty. It continues with, that is, talk about fewness of wishes, contentment, seclusion, aloofness, arousing energy, ethics, immersion, wisdom, freedom, and the knowledge and vision of freedom. This is the third vital condition for the development of the awakening factors. And the question was about self-effacement. What is that exactly? And how does it help to soften the heart? So this isn't always translated. The Pali word is salika. Salika. I guess it's a little closer to the right pronunciation. And it's not always translated as self-effacement. In fact, I'm most used to seeing it translated as effacement, which is a little bit different. And because self-effacement is more like humbling yourself or staying in the background. And effacement is really the rubbing away of things, the wearing away of something. I think of it like erasing or causing something to vanish. And what the Buddha was talking about, there's a sutta entitled Salika, in the middle-length discourses, and it's a wonderful sutta, and it's about the wearing away of our defilements. And so that's what this is intended to mean. There is another definition, which is the austere life. So Bhikkhu Bodhi actually in this sutta that we're talking about tonight, the one that the question was about, Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it as talk concerned with the austere life that is conducive to opening up the heart. Personally, I would find talk about rubbing away, wearing away the defilements to be more about opening the heart than the austerity of one's holy life. So I like that translation better. And the whole sutta that I'm referring to in the middle-length discourse is, as I said, about that. And I want to describe that a bit. And then we'll talk more about the wearing away. We'll talk more about the opening of the heart. So this sutta begins with the Buddha talking about how one can really practice very well with samadhi, with going into various levels of deep concentration, and think that they're practicing effacement or they're wearing away their defilements, but he said that's not how it works. That's not really what's happening. Because when if the practice of deep concentration is done in the absence of the other factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, often you can see that people can make certain kinds of progress. They can develop psychic powers, they can have all kinds of amazing experiences in meditation, but it doesn't really help them develop wisdom. It doesn't really help them develop virtue either. Sometimes it can be even more dangerous to have that kind of power without the rest of the Noble Eightfold Path. But here in this, so the Buddha says that's, they're not, they need to add something more to really practice effacement. It really starts with mindfulness. Because we have to, he said, first start by determining that you're going to change your unskillful habits. And the way he says it is, he goes through this whole list and he says, others will be cruel, but we will not be cruel here. Others will kill living creatures, but here we will not kill living creatures. Others will steal, but here we will not steal. Others will be unchaste, but here we will not be unchaste. Others will lie, but here we will not lie. And you can kind of see the collection of things that is coming up here. It's first starts with cruelty and then goes into the precepts. And it goes a little further. It actually is listing the 10 unwholesome things that is a very widely used list in the suttas. Others will speak divisively, but here we will not speak divisively. Others will speak harshly, but here we will not speak harshly. Others will talk nonsense, but here we will not talk nonsense. Others will be covetous, but here we will not be covetous. Others will have ill will, but here we will not have ill will. And those two we see are actually, it's a little bit different wording, but it's the first two hindrances. So for our purposes, looking at the hindrances and the factors of enlightenment, of course, all of these things matter. And as we're meditating, we might recognize any of these things as conditions that we have to deal with. But it's good to notice that the 5 hindrances are included in this list. And then he says others will have wrong view, but we will not have wrong view. Others will have wrong thought, but we'll have right thought. Others will have wrong speech, but we will have right speech, and so on with right action and right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion, or right samadhi. Others will have wrong knowledge, but here we will have right knowledge. Others will have wrong freedom, but here we will have right freedom. Others will be overcome by dullness and drowsiness, but here we'll be rid of dullness and drowsiness. And others will be restless, but we will not be restless. Others will have doubts, but we will have gone beyond doubt. So there are the other hindrances. Others will be irritable, but we will be without anger. Others will be acrimonious, but we will be without acrimony. Others will be offensive, but here we will be inoffensive. Others will be contemptuous, but here we will be without contempt. Jealous, but here we will be without jealousy. Stingy, but we will be without stinginess. Devious, will be without being will not be devious. Deceitful will not be deceitful. Pompous will not be pompous. Arrogant will not be arrogant. Hard to admonish, but here we will be easy to admonish. Others will have bad friends, but we will have good friends, which is the very first vital condition for developing the awakening factors. Others will be negligent and we'll be diligent. Others faithless, but we'll have faith. Others conscientious less, but we'll have a sense of conscience. Others will be imprudent, but here we'll be prudent. Others will be unlearned, but we'll be learned. Don't worry, this list is almost over. Others will be lazy, but here we'll be energetic. There's one of the factors of enlightenment. Others will be unmindful, but here we will be mindful. Also, of course, a factor of enlightenment. Others will be witless, and here we'll be accomplished in wisdom. And others will be attached to their own views, holding them tight, and refusing to let go. But here we will not be attached to our own views, not holding them tight, but we'll let them go easily. So this list doesn't, of course, cover everything we can be challenged by, but it's a good start. And there are 44 of them. So I have found this incredibly valuable. And also the fact that the English words that have been selected for the Pali words that are there the Pali words can have other meanings. So it might even be the case that something in particular that you are facing or working with really is there, even if it doesn't seem to appear on the list. In any case, the approach that the Buddha offers is the same. First, this statement makes it clear, like, what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. Thinking about if I have this challenge in my character, in my conditioning, whatever, then there is an opposite. There is this other way. So one of the times, I've loved this sutta for decades now, and one of the times when I was working with it, it was when my mom was still alive and she needed a lot of help from me, and my whole life with her, it was challenging in certain ways. She's quite a perfectionist, and I could never really do it right. You kind of know this story. She was a great mother, but that was one piece of the dynamic, and I would feel irritable with her, and I hated it. If I got impatient or something, and walk away from that, and like, oh man, I don't want to do that, and I really didn't have clarity around what exactly the problem was. But when I was looking at this and I saw irritation, I really thought, that's it. I'm irritable. I'm being irritable with her. I'm irritated by the way she acts, what she says to me. And so then, taking it through this, there are five steps here, really. And we just talked about the first one, which is kind of stating, okay, others will be irritated, and I am going to be without irritation. That's how I want to be with my mom. And the Buddha said the next thing to do is to give rise to that thought. Think about that. So he says, even giving rise to the thought of skillful qualities is very helpful, let alone following the path in body and speech. There's actually a note on Sutta Central that says, before we do anything, we think of doing it. And that in itself is powerful, as it sets the mind in a certain direction. Now you might say, my reactions with irritation weren't thought of before, but that's a habit that's conditioned. And so I needed to really bring the thought of not reacting with irritation to mind. And that's a powerful first step. And I, since have really been interested in seeing how the mind is pre-programmed by what we think. The good things and the not good things. You might try on this retreat to, and maybe some of you do this all the time, I don't know, but the Buddha also mentioned, you go to bed at night with the thought of what time you want to wake up in the morning in your mind. And if you've tried this, you might have the experience that you wake up at that time or shortly before that time. Usually for me, it's about 10 minutes before the time. Under weird circumstances, it might not work. You're super overtired because you just did a whole week of really hard work or something, not enough sleep for 2 days or whatever. But in general, it's pretty reliable. So this pre-programming of the mind, setting up in the mind what you intend to do without harshness or stress or being demanding of your mind, but this really firm suggestion, clear suggestion. So he says that's why you should give rise to these thoughts, and then he goes through the whole list again, which I'm not going to do. And then the next step, this section is entitled Bypassing, which I'm a little apprehensive about because of the way bypassing is used as, spiritual bypassing. That's not the kind of bypassing we're talking about here. Here the Buddha says, you need to take the smooth path rather than the rough path. He says, suppose there is a rough path and there's a smoother path to get around it. Or suppose there's a rough ford, a rough crossing of the creek or river, and there's another smooth ford to get around it. In the same way, a cruel individual, so another way to put this is someone with the habit of being irritated or someone with the habit of being angry or pompous or whatever. Someone like that, someone with that challenge, can bypass it or go around on a smoother path by not being cruel, by not being irritated, by not being angry. And you think, yeah, duh, But just setting that up in the intention and then following through with it when it happens. You gotta have a lot of mindfulness. It can be hard to catch ourselves before we actually start going down the path of action. But once we can stop ourselves and then look at, okay, what's the way here without irritation? And you might really surprise yourself being able to change the way you think and then the way you speak and act. An individual who's attached to their own views, holding them tight and refusing to let go, gets around it by not being attached to their views. And of course the beauty of this, or the power of this, or the amazing results in this come from really ourselves, each of us, working out how we do that. We're clear about what the unwholesome or unskillful or unbeneficial action is, or attitude, and then we know what the skillful one is that we want to do, and we practice doing it. Practice on small things, keep practicing like that, keep holding back on following that same course, and then gradually it gets easier to go to that smooth path, or that smooth forward. And then what the Buddha says happens is you're leading, you're going upwards. He said all unskillful qualities lead downwards, while all skillful qualities lead upwards. In the same way, a cruel individual is led upwards by not being cruel. An individual who kills is led upwards by not killing, and so on. And it works. I certainly saw it with my mom. I remember being with some of my bhikkhuni friends, and my mom called me on the phone, and I would get off the phone and someone would say to me, "You are so kind and patient with your mom." And I'm like, yes. You know, there's progress here. And then the fifth section on this sutta, the Buddha talks about extinguishment. That when we do this enough, eventually that tendency completely disappears. It's completely effaced, erased, rubbed away. And you can also get a real sense of how karma works, and how we're changing our karma when we change these behaviors. And when they get erased, like you get to a point where being cruel or being irritated or whatever it is just seems very far away in the past. It doesn't mean that things never come up again, but you're well practiced at working with it. We all, what do they call that when they talk about pain? Breakthrough pain. When you're taking medication to control pain, sometimes there are breakthrough defilements. But we can work with them, and of course this is not to ignore the fact that there can be much deeper issues with regards to the kinds of challenges we have, and we want to take every step we can to try to heal that, to understand it, to work through it. So this hopefully gives rise to being kind and compassionate with ourselves and also with others. You know, so that we can work through things, but, you know, the Buddha would often say, okay, if you're developing good moral virtue, then don't puff yourselves up or look down on others because you've got this good moral virtue. That kind of spoils it a bit, you know. So we want to make sure that we're understanding and cautious, to be kind and patient with ourselves and with others. So that's the kind of thing, the saleka that the Buddha was saying. You know, when we have good friends, good companions, and I know of most of you having good friends and companions, people you can talk with about these kinds of things that are happening in your life, the kinds of things you're working with in your practice. And when we're able to do that, and we are, you know, talking about it is, you know, kind of fits right in here. This is how we encourage the mind to go in that direction. It gives us strength. And, you know, really good encouragement from our friends to, you know, pick this up and be able to do it. And of course, that whole process helps to soften the heart. So when we're, you know, defensive or feeling threatened, the heart hardens. When we're being conditioned by the opposite kind of rhetoric, the opposite kind of thinking of judgmental, being judgmental or negative or putting people down or you know, dehumanizing them. It can go all the way to the worst kind of human behavior. When we're doing that, that's programming the mind in that direction. But when we're talking about, you know, how can we, you know, erase these tendencies, this conditioning that we've gotten, no matter how many times we've been down that rough path, we can change it and use the smooth path instead. Make that our way of living. So it does soften our hearts. So we posted this sutta in this list, and you can use it during this retreat for whatever comes up, of course. And as you're working with the hindrances or whatever might be disturbing your meditation, then hopefully you can at least mentally work through maybe something that has happened in the past where you would like to handle that kind of situation differently, or the feelings that arise in us, and try to recognize, you know, how do I go about dealing with restlessness or dealing with doubt? What does it mean to have to be without doubt, go beyond doubt? And that's the smooth path. Well, when this is where the real work is. How do I work with my particular challenge that I have now? How do I go to the opposite and actually make that the standard for myself? Something like doubt, one of the causes of doubt is thinking too much. Really trying to work it out and figure it out and think about all these other options and possibilities. And, you know, sometimes we just need to notice that there's something we don't know. And then we might have a chance to ask about it. Seeking information is a good way to resolve doubt. Or even if I just sit with it and let the question be there and see if the answer shows up. But instead of, you know, trying to really, instead of proliferating around it, we can help ourselves be on, even though we don't know, we can help ourselves be on a solid ground of observing and being open to the answer to that doubt arising. So that's one possibility with doubt. How about ill will? If ill will arises, some of these things arise in our minds and we don't even have an object or a circumstance. It's just an energy that's coming out of our past conditioning. And of course, how does goodwill replace it? Well, if there is anything that you can identify attached to this ill will, then you can look at, okay, what does this look like? What would this be like? How can I think about this situation in a different way? Or how do I come to the situation with a different feeling? And it's not just mental work for this, it's also the work of being with the experience, like I've talked about before, being with the experience as it appears in the body, and letting that whole arising of energy and the dissolving of it again go through its cycle, and then reflecting upon bringing the goodwill to light and seeing, like what you can do to encourage the mind in the direction of moving towards the goodwill. Most of the time for me, what I've found effective is trying to look deeper into the experience of, the others involved in whatever that context would be, or even if it's something from the past, trying to understand where they might be coming from. And that has helped a lot in being able to respond with goodwill instead of ill will. And so, it varies, and you can try different things. Of course, there's a lot available in modern psychology that can help with these things, but when you really go deeper into the Dhamma around impermanence, dukkha, and not-self, then insight might actually come that really relieves you of this hindrance or this challenge. And the smooth path becomes quite obvious and much more accessible. So those are some thoughts on it. And it's such a big chunk of the work that we do as we evolve on the path. So feel free, if you run into any of these things, anything that you want to see, well, how can I apply this here? Let us know. See if we can give you some ideas.